Hi, I'm Elizabeth Glaros. I'm a cognitive psychologist and semiotician, and I'm the founder of Sophia's Best.
And I'm Vioni. I'm her daughter, a helper, and apprentice for all things Sophia's Best. And today I'm helping lead our next podcast, continuing the podcast series, where we talk about Aristotelean well-being. And more specifically, today we're going to talk about truth, which is a integral part of Aristotelean well-being. And I guess the best place to start is by asking, what is truth?
Yeah, well, I know that when we think about it, it sounds very complicated because there are a lot of things are said about what is truth. For Aristotle, truth is the cornerstone of reasoning. He has devoted a lot of work on how we find the truth. And for him, it's quite simple because truth has to do with correct or incorrect understanding. Because whether a thing is present or not, as we say real, whether it exists or not, it has nothing to do with truth. Something is, it is. What we have to do is understand what it is and why it is the way it is. So when we go through that process and we reach a conclusion because we make assumptions, we have to prove that our assumptions of our understanding is correct or incorrect. Because we obviously want a correct understanding, not an incorrect understanding.
So for Aristotle, truth isn't a matter of determining what is fact or reality, questioning whether something exists or not. Instead, it's about understanding that which already exists.
Yeah, because facts and aspects of reality need to be interpreted and understood. And we always have to know whether our understanding is correct or incorrect, because we make conclusions on the basis of our understanding of things. Make decisions, we make choices on all aspects of life.
Could you maybe give us some examples of...
Yeah, I will start with some very simple examples before I go to how it applies to us as individuals. Let's take, for example, courts, court cases, right? The justice system. Both sides present evidence. They present facts. And the whole procedure is about identifying which facts are really true, where is where, which point of view is the truth, because the facts are more or less the same in these court cases. It's how you view, from which side you actually view and examine them. And what is it that makes a case? Finding motive.
Right.
The cause that brings all the data, the facts, the evidence together in a way that they make sense, then they justify the action, because truth is about cause. It's cause that establishes truth and not fact or reality. And I'll give you another example, because we do use science as, whatever is scientific is necessarily true just by the mere fact that it's scientific and there's been a research process, and that, makes it true. If you pick any topic and you look at the evidence and, the discussion about the topic, you will see that there is evidence and facts and research results that suggest certain aspects, and then there's other research and other evidence that suggests something completely opposite or very different. And here, I do want to tell our readers that if you just follow facts without looking the context within which they are developed, and you don't see the questions that are behind the answers and what they represent and, how they are interpreted, you may be terribly misled. Terribly misled. Because you say, it is a fact that 90% of blah, 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 do that or think of that. Of what? How was the question posed? Who gave the answer? How's that? There's so many things involved when you interpret facts to establish truth, whether you're understanding, because facts need to be interpreted.
I also know that there are a lot of people who think that they're very empirical and very correct and very factual, that claim, I believe what I see, and the truth is what I see. But for Aristotle, weren't the senses the least reliable tool for truth?
Not reliable. Senses are not reliable, but they are extremely significant because without them, they are the initial part of the process of interpreting, understanding, and explaining what it is that you see or what you hear, that you experience, or what you see. Of course, he does say that vision, what we see, is the most pleasurable of senses. And it is, and that's why we think that it's the most reliable, when in fact it's not. It can be very misleading because we choose to see what we want to see. We focus on certain things based on our experiences, our ideas, our points of views, blah, 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 so many different things. That's why two different people are exposed to the exact same, let's say, visual setting, and their take from what they see is completely different. They see like two different things.
So if our senses are not the most reliable tool, what is?
Right. So our senses, yes, they're not the most reliable tools. Reasoning is. For Aristotle, the cornerstone of everything is reasoning. And without reasoning, you cannot establish truth. Okay? Right. It's a reasoning process. It's a thinking process. It's not the feelings. It's not the senses. It's not data. It's not reality. It's not tangible things. It's causes that you arrive at through reasoning to establish whether it's correct or incorrect.
What does all of this have to do with well-being, though?
The aim of Aristotelean well-being is to discover your true self. Magic word, true. So you have to discover the truth in you. And according to Aristotle, that's the most difficult thing to do.
Right.
Okay. And that's because, as we said before, we have the senses and we have the emotions. Okay? Reasoning is what comes to create a measure between what we experience, our feelings, and how reasoning interacts so that we respond appropriately. So let's say we are exposed to a situation or to people, we feel something. It's the first information that we have that gives value to our experience. What we feel, whether is it sadness, is it anxiety, is it pressure, we try to describe it in words. Now, it's very important that, yes, you manage to describe it, but what's the truth of that feeling? Meaning, first of all, your reading, is it pressure? Is it anxiety? Is it sadness? It needs to be correct. And then your understanding of your feelings needs to also be correct so that you may resolve a personal conflict, an interpersonal conflict, a social conflict, whatever conflict. You have to find to the truth of your feelings, of your opinions, of your ideas in order to find solutions, develop, grow, and reach this well-being, Aristotelian well-being, eudaimonia.
But then, how does one even go about finding the truth of their feelings beyond just acknowledging that feeling exists?
When it comes to our, to discovering our true self, which has to do with finding the truth in our feelings, as I said, in our opinions, ideas about ourselves and others. It is the most difficult thing because we have our personal biases, right. How we would like to be seen, how we think others see us. So there's always a bias that, makes everything more difficult. That doesn't mean that it is impossible. On the contrary, this is where Aristotelian well-being makes a breakthrough, because it gives you a method to actually cut through the noise, because we have a lot of noise that does not allow us to get to our personal truth. And how this is done? Let's say, for example, you feel anxious. If you start trying to explain, or describe. I feel anxious. What is that? How do I feel? I feel overwhelmed. I feel pressured. Do I feel threatened? Do I feel I don't have time? Or am I not well equipped to respond to situations? Or I feel not very confident, or I can't make my choices. There are so many things, and they are all valid because feelings are real, right? They are real, and we have to find their truth in understanding their main cause. So all of these that I just described, lack of confidence, feeling powerless, not being able to make choices, blah, 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 they are all in part, they are causes of my anxiety, right? And the more of these, the more intense the feeling of anxiety. Now, once I have these, what I try to do is find the basic cause. Like we say, the root problem. So you distill, you distill, and you want to get to the bottom line. It's something that we say, you have to get to the bottom line. This is the basic cause, is that which justifies and makes everything understandable. If you find that, the bottom line, the basic cause, you then start to work your way up. That's what we say, you got the bottom, and then you go up, and you start, you become, when you have the understanding, you are all more able to, I try to avoid words like manage and things like that, because that's not what you do. You learn how to keep a balance. You learn how to behave. You learn how to interpret, basically, and you learn how to attach value to things. So you are not overwhelmed. So you recognize the triggers. So you know that if I press like the red button, this will come, and if I press the green button, these are different behaviors, what I do. You test out yourself. And what's the most important out of this, most important thing? That you learn who you are. Because unless you go through this process and find the bottom line of your anxiety, let's say it's a defined insecurity, right? It doesn't mean that you will get rid of anxiety. You won't. Anxiety is there, and there is a purpose for us to feel anxious. There is a good purpose to it as well. But you will be able to react in an appropriate manner and get and reach your objectives once you understand what all this is and its truth. That's why it's so important for your well-being.
So when you talk about truth and cause and the bottom line, is it, as we've mentioned in previous podcasts, that magical question, why?
Yes. And because my words, there are a lot of whys. When we try to understand something related to us, as I said, our feelings, or why did I behave like this? No, I don't understand. Why did I react like that? Your answers to the question will involve a lot of because 1, because 2, because 3, because 4. So there will be a lot of because, inverted, why. There may be 5 different reasons, or 6 different reasons, or 10 different reasons. In the process of thinking and reasoning, what you do is you organize the reasons, the because, the whys, you organize them and you put them in hierarchy. What's more significant, what's less significant, and you end up in this process, which unfortunately it's very difficult for you to understand the way I explain it here, but we do it in our seminars because we do it in practice and we do it with things that you express spontaneously. So through the process and the hierarchy and the organization, you realize there is one out of the 10 that explains all the rest.
One basic cause.
And that is the basic. That is the bottom line.
So just like the motive that ties together all the facts
which
in
is
the court
one
case.
Which is one.
Yeah. The basic cause, the why behind all of your feelings and behaviors explain the truth of your character.
Yes. Because again, because what does it reveal? What does that reveal?
Your need.
No, not just that. Truth reveals a lot of stuff. How you view the world,
Right.
how you interpret reality, and how you process your understanding towards a correct or incorrect direction. So, in effect, what you do is you put your reasoning at work, and your reasoning on one side, your behavior, your feelings, and the result of your actions on the other give you information about who you are and how you can resolve your conflicts.
Since we're talking about truth in well-being and truth in a person, doesn't that then mean that there is no such thing as one holistic objective truth? It's all kind of subjective to each person. Like my truth is my own truth of myself, and your truth is your own truth of yourself.
Yes, there is. I would like to. Aristotle is always very clear, and his views, what they do is they bring things together instead of fragmenting them, because we do have a lot of ideas so spread out in our heads. You can't bring them together. There is scientific truth, the empirical truth, out of which the research, and the evidence there always about the cause that proves things. It's a correct understanding that, the sun rises because blah, 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 or this tree grows because of certain...
Water and light.
Yes, there are formal laws proven through science, which is the highest form of knowledge. But then, is it objective? Yes, we can say it's objective in terms that there is a kind of universal, holistic understanding to it and logic to it. But the subjective is always, in any interpretation, even the empirical, with the exception of certain rules, because subjectivity is a personal perspective. Now, the thing is, with Aristotelian philosophy and Aristotelian well-being, that yes, you have your personal perspective, and yes, your personal perspective can be objective, meaning correct. So what he suggests, and he gives us a way of going about it, is he brings objectivity in what is otherwise considered subjective. Does that make any sense?
I guess so. But even in a subjective truth, rather,
meaning it's a
how do
personal
you
truth.
distinguish the difference between a subjective perspective, a personal perspective, and a subjective truth?
And
subjective truth.
You see, you use two different words to describe the same thing. The subjective is the personal, and the personal is the subjective. And it's considered subjective, not universally true, because it's personal, right?
Yes, well, I mean, not everybody's views are true. Like, just because it's your view.
True according to who?
Yeah, so how do you create the distinction that, yes, this view that I have is true, albeit subjective, versus this view that I have is untrue? How does someone make that distinction?
Right. A view, personal, someone expresses a personal view. In how he unfolds his thinking, this can be correct or incorrect. Right? His understanding of what he is trying to express may be correct or incorrect. So true or false. And that's why I said that Aristotle has provided us with a method which proves correctness or truth in what is considered otherwise very subjective and non-relevant to a discussion. If subjectivity was non-relevant, really, in terms of truth, we would never be able to discover ourselves. We would never be able to, think of, have ideas or construct views that lead us to universal laws, meaning those that apply to more than one individual, those related, for example, to health, to things that have to do with more of us. It's the individual and the personal that advance the universal.
Okay.
Okay, this is very Aristotelian. He gives a lot of emphasis to the individual and the power of the individual. So we can discuss about different things, and we may have very different opinions, and we can both be absolutely correct.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if truth, right, has to do with cause, and we said the basic cause that justifies everything else, it's what brings everything else together, and that makes something true. The opposite is what makes something false. If you cannot, in whatever we say, the argument, the view, the whatever is expressed, if there isn't one single basic cause, reason, because, why, whatever you want to say it, that justifies the presence of everything else, that everything else is brought together by this one thing, it means that there is a contradiction, and therefore it's false. So contradiction proves falsity, synthesis proves truth. Did I make that too complicated?
No, I follow. I'm following.
You follow? Okay. And well-being, we talk about a whole character. We say he's a complete personality. We talk about completeness, and we talk about whole and being this and being that. What does that mean? A synthesis of things. So I, as Elizabeth, or you as Yoni, or any other individual, I am who I am as a result of a synthesis of qualities. It's not my skin, my color, my age, my hair, my whatever, my physical characteristics that make me who I am. It's my qualities that make me who I am. And it's very important for my well-being to discover those. Because if I don't discover those, I will not find happiness.
If I am looking at the qualities that make up who I am, or I'm trying to look at my character as a whole, and let's say there are levels that go from what the outside world perceives versus what is happening internally, where are contradictions allowed to exist and where are they not allowed to exist? Because many times I'll say that my behaviors contradict themselves, but I still feel like they are true to making up who I am. Like in one moment I'll be extremely shy, and in another moment I'll be very outgoing. But I still can exist as a whole. Where then does someone try to locate the contradiction, the bad contradiction that leads to false, versus where can contradiction exist but still be true?
And when we talk about ourselves, it's obvious that we do not want a contradiction within the self. Okay. And unfortunately, a lot of people do feel a conflict which arises from a contradiction, but many times the contradiction is of who we are in respect to what is expected of us or how others perceive us. And because we are social beings and acceptance is important, approval is important, being valued is important to our self-esteem, we internalize the conflict and the contradiction, and we think it's an inner contradiction when it's not. And it's very difficult to resolve the contradiction. Rather, no. What is difficult, most difficult, and that's where reasoning and Aristotelean well-being comes into place, is it allows you, at the first level, it allows you to understand and recognize where the contradiction comes from. Whether the contradiction is an inner, the dialogue that you have within yourself, or your interaction with your environment, okay? Because it's very important that we separate the two. The most important is that we have our inner self is one complete I wouldn't use the word
cohesive.
I don't like the word complete, because what's complete?
It has something very finite.
No, what does that mean? Anyway, we change all the time. So what does complete mean? But cohesive, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. And the making sense is not that things are the same, I react the same. There is a balance. Because synthesis has a balance of different stuff that make painting, It's different stuff that make different characteristics in different values, in different intensities. Is the beauty of the human psyche, it's who we are. And that's where Aristotelean well-being, even if you don't grasp some of the main principles in reasoning or in how you find truth, although with our help you do, it's fundamental that you distinguish between the outer and the inner, and focus on the inner, because that is your strength and your power in interacting, relating with everything else that's out there is what you have in here. So if the two are not clear, it's like you're fighting yourself. Can't go anywhere if you fight yourself. There's no growth, there's no advancement, there's no learning.
Can I throw in a question that's a little of a curveball? I think about the question all the time of are you true to you? Am I being true to myself? Would you have any advice for how people can, if there's an alarm, a ding, 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 you're veering off, or ding, 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 yay, you are being true to you. What do you think are signals for identifying that you are being true to you?
I think the easiest, like we said before, is your feelings. It's the first thing, the first signal, because it's not, the feeling is not necessarily the result of reasoning. It's the easiest, spontaneous, first level thing that happens. You're exposed to something and you say, uh-oh, there's something odd. I feel uncomfortable. I feel overwhelmed. I feel like I'm out of my space, place, sphere, universe, whatever. Of course, that shouldn't solidify. That shouldn't solidify. In what I mean is, okay, so I was exposed to this situation. I felt uncomfortable. I felt things that told me, I have to think about it and see, we go back to what I was saying, to find whether the feeling is true to you or not true to you, what quality it reveals, right? Because if you feel uncomfortable and then you start trying to understand reason 1, reason 2, reason 3, reason 4, reason 5, you go through the process, you find the basic cause, and if you find that basic cause, then you know whether it's true or not true to you, because the whole process is a learning process.
Because I guess sometimes discomfort can be a signal hey, you're not in the right place, right. This isn't for you.
Exactly. And pain. Isn't pain also, when you get hurt, it says, hello, you shouldn't touch fire because you get burned.
Right.
It's the same thing. You do feel, you have a feeling. You don't understand it immediately, but you do have a feeling. And the process that we are talking about, the better you become at it, the better you get to know who you are. So you evolve as an individual, because you get to know your truths, your reasons, as if I was to say, the reason that Yoni is the way she is, or the reasons that Elizabeth is the way she is, and the reasons are the qualities, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because truth is a matter of quality, cause is quality. Now I confused you.
No,
you still, okay.
I'm here.
Okay,
final question. Dun, 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 dun. Is ignorance bliss?
I think if ignorance is bliss, I think the question was formulated by ignorant people.
Right.
Okay? Because I cannot for the life of me imagine someone with some level of understanding would ever say that being ignorant is beneficial.
Right.
Okay? And especially when it comes to knowing who you are. Because you cannot know everything. You can't be an expert across all sciences. You can't be an expert across all fields of different interests, but you can be an expert on who you are. And that's what Aristotelian well-being is all about. Becoming an expert, a specialist, a know-it-all about yourself. And the method, because it's a method. It's not theoretical, it's practical. How I go about it, finding the reasons, my truth, my qualities, who I am, so I can develop, and so on. Because ignorance is, for Aristotle and for me, it's a life not worth living. It's not life at all. You don't know yourself, which means you cannot make your own choices. It means that you cannot form meaningful relationships. And the most important and Aristotelian is the power that you have as an individual to lead your life, to give direction to your life, to define your wants and your needs. You relinquish it. You give it to somebody else. Because there are always those around us who have the answer ready. You only don't think. I'll tell you what to do. Leonie, didn't you think, you need this, have this, you see you fit so much better, and it comes in a pack, different colors, in a great price. So we have everything so readily available, and we sacrifice our truth for practicality and for what Aristotle says, short moments of pleasure, but not fulfillment. So you need to always, the pleasure is momentary. It's superficial. It's not a deep feeling. It's not the last feeling. That's why a lot of people are always running after this, how can I have fun? 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 And you have fun for 5 minutes, and then when you're left alone, or that specific situation is gone, then you are with yourself again. So when you are with yourself, you want to have a good time.
I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that with truth, there is like a sense of burden or responsibility that, like, as you were saying, with ignorance, like, someone just hands you a convenient little piece of truth and you don't have to think about it and it's not your responsibility. But yeah, truth may have some kind of responsibility, but it also empowers you and has the potential to liberate you, right?
Yeah, and these are the paradoxes, I think, of modern thinking, because you cannot be empowered unless you take responsibility of your choices. Because being empowered and giving direction to your life, leading your own life, it means that I make choices. When you make choices, it means you take responsibility. You have to decide this or that, A or B. It's not ready-made. Ready-made, quick solutions, they don't help you. They don't help your well-being, no.
This olive tree was not ready-made. She's old. She's
it's not ready-made.
Taken on the testament of time.
Yeah. I don't know how much to emphasize this, but every one of us has incredible power that is not released. In fact, it's trapped, and it's trapped by, and this might sound a bit, political or whatever, but it is trapped by all those who are very willing to convince us that it can be done any other way, and that prove to us in many ways that our voice doesn't count and it doesn't matter because things get done irrespective of our wishes. Still, however, if each one of us as individuals, took the time and went through the process to find the truth in what we are told inside us and outside of us, we will be able to make much better choices for ourselves and for others. So it's for me, it's so important that we go through this process. I can't emphasize it enough.
No, I completely agree.
Yeah, and it's not a theory. You really have to come to one of our seminars to realize that it's not theoretical.
Yeah.
It's been presented as theoretical, but it is not theoretical by people who have not understood him anyway.
Yeah, you really should join us on some of our experiential seminars, because Aristotle is not theoretical, and we have gone through great lengths to make him experiential and implement him in part of well-being in daily reality. And in our seminars, all of this logic, we teach it through games and cultural activities. And our games, we call them dialectic games, and they're creative, thought-provoking, almost a little quirky activities that help you see your reasoning. And then, of course, the best example of Aristotelean well-being is in society and culture. We pair our dialectic games with cultural activities that we call illustrative activities, like wine tasting, nature hikes, and so on and so forth. So, yes, Aristotle is not theory. He's not meant for the classroom. He's meant to be experienced and implemented in our daily well-being. And now you get to experience it, so do join us.
And Aristotelian well-being and Aristotle talk about two types of wisdom. Wisdom, actually the word Sophia, which we have taken, is called wisdom. He uses it for scientific knowledge. And he uses phronesis, prudence, for experiential knowledge. But because the word prudence, through the years, is completely inappropriate for what he actually means, the experience you gain and the wisdom you gain from the experience of living, we have, we use the word Sophia. This is inappropriate use of the word, but I think the English word wisdom gives credit to and value to what he actually meant.
If you enjoy this type of conversation about Aristotle and Sophia, and hence Sophia's best, like this video, subscribe, follow along our YouTube channel. We're very active on all forms of social media platform, and we have a very colorful, expansive website that displays all of our seminars and our experiences. And comment below if you have any thoughts or questions, because reasoning and dialectics is not meant to be just between one or two people. It's meant to be between many people, and we want a little community here. So tag along and be part of the Sophia's Best community. Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.